to, so our next person would be our Director of Public Safety. And you're also going to be talking about police and fire, correct?
Yes, Mayor. And thank you for having me here tonight. My presentation basically, it's going to be, I'm just going to get right to the point for both departments. I'm going to explain to the public what our goals are. I'm going to throw some numbers out there so they understand where I'm coming from and what our priorities are and why they're priorities, and we'll get down to that. So, in respect to the the police department, I set 3 goals. We have a number of goals, but these 3 stick out in my mind. Number 1, we want to constantly interact and communicate with our citizens and identify community issues and resolve them in a collective group. And for that, we just started, we're going to have a neighborhood watch program. That was my number one of my priorities here. And my phone's been ringing off the hook. I don't even know, to be honest with you, if this room's going to work for us. We may have to go to a church or maybe the high school. But people are interested in this neighborhood watch program. It's great, part of community policing. I had a public safety meeting here already, the coldest day of the year. This room was packed. And I've been having private meetings with our residents. They come in all the time. They talk to me about the issues in the department or the city. And we use social media to get to our people. And just to go back, I've had 7 months to evaluate this. And when I say evaluate, I listened. Listen. I took notes. I interviewed. I met with every council member here, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 times, maybe more. Interviewed all the employees, both in police and fire. I interviewed residents. So my assessment here tonight is based on my 33 years of experience in law enforcement. What I want to do, I think this is important, you want to create a warm and welcoming environment. By that, you do proactive patrols, you want selective enforcement on some of these side streets that we get call after call after call about speeding vehicles, vehicles going through stop signs. I think it's imperative to have specialized units here, like a narcotics unit, auto theft unit, and we just got our K-9. Officer McNeil starts the academy on May 5th, and that's the start of everything here. And we want to conduct thorough investigations when people report crimes here. And lastly, we want to recruit and retain professional employees and provide them with continuous training and opportunities to grow in the department. Our last interviews, you know, it's kind of funny with all these young people that come in, they want to interview. They don't even ask what the pay is. They want to know, what do you have going on in the department? Do you have any specialized groups? I want to be a detective. I want to work drugs. And the answer right now is no. And it's easy to hire people. It is. That's the easiest part, is hiring. It's retaining them, because they want to grow, they want to develop, and also goes for the veteran officers. You can't drive around in a police car for 30 years. It doesn't work. My job as a leader is to provide the employees, our greatest asset, with opportunity so they become better and make this a better department and community. Just real quick, our statistics for 2018, if the public knows, we do about 26,000 police runs a year. That's a lot of calls for 5.1 square miles. 26,000, we make about 1,700 arrests. And for the people that say we don't write tickets, last year we wrote 12,000 tickets. That's a lot of tickets. We have 550 average vehicle accidents. Underneath that is the major violent crimes. These are the crimes as a police entity that we have to report to the FBI for statistical purposes. And if you look on it there, you have homicide, sexual assault, robbery, assaults, burglaries, larcenies, vehicle theft, and arson. The numbers have gone down compared to 2017, which is a great thing. However, what I'm concerned about are the numbers. You know, when you have 739 assaults in 1 year, 173 burglaries, 522 larcenies, and what went up, and it keeps going up, is our vehicle thefts here. There's organized rings going around, not just Eastpointe, throughout the state of Michigan, and the only way we're going to get intelligence on them, I'm going to have to put an officer in the auto theft squad. They fund the position 60%, and I will assure you that those vehicle thefts will go down next year. Next slide is our current staffing level. Right now we're budgeted for 40 police officers. I have 38. And if you look on the staffing schedule, 2 administration, that includes myself, I count as 1/2 because half my salary comes out of the fire budget, since I oversee the fire department also. We have 5 lieutenants, 5 sergeants. We have 21 patrol officers, 7 on days, 8 on afternoons, and 6 on midnights. And keep in mind that our minimum staffing levels for patrol officers only is 4. Every night, 7 days a week, 24/7, 4 police officers are on the road. And that's kind of difficult to manage, especially midnights, when your total staff is 6 and 4 on the road. It's hard to work days off in training. We have 5 detectives. I just hired a record supervisor, an IT person. So far, so good. I have a part-time code enforcement officer who basically just enforces parking laws. I would like to see in the future him maybe cross-train. He can work with the building department. If he's on the street and sees a car on blocks on a driveway, he can enforce that. As of now, he cannot. We have 8 service aides, which I just expanded their duties. Now they're taking non-essential police reports. That keeps our police officers on the street. We have 28 reserves. 7 are graduating from the academy next week. We have a porter who takes care of the building, the vehicle maintenance, a property officer. That's a part-time civilian position. And I have administrative secretary, clerical 2. We have a part-time animal control, soon to be full-time. The interview process hopefully starts in the next few weeks. We have a chaplain. Actually, we have 3 now. And the one chaplain who has 13 years on is requesting compensation. We'll go into that later on. And we have crossing guards. We have 8. And just to get the crossing guards clarified, by statute, we are obligated as the police entity to pay their salaries, not the schools. We have not met the budgeted levels for police officers in several years. And the reason is there's no succession plan. There's never been a succession plan. And if you look underneath that, projected retirements, this is the scary part. As of November of 2020, which is just around the corner, I have 9 officers that are eligible to retire. And 5 of them, which is 100% of all our lieutenants, they can retire by 2020. So the next, and we're going to go over the process of hiring, but if you want to have a succession plan, now is the time to start planning for these retirements. The next slide here, I just want to give you and the public an idea how difficult it is to hire somebody, especially a police officer. Number one, we have to advertise for the position. Civil service says we have to advertise for 30 days, so that's 30 days gone. We have to notify the applicant of the testing date for 10 days. That's a civil service rule. Oral board, that takes 5 days to set up, give or take a few days. We schedule a civil service meeting. Sometimes it takes 10 days, maybe less. The background investigations take 30 to 40 days on average. That's what they're coming in at. Psychological testing takes about 2 weeks, the time we schedule. 7 days for drug screening, 4 days for typically if we hire somebody, they have to give 2 weeks' notice to their previous employer. And our field training officer, give or take, it's about 18 weeks. So to hire one police officer, the time we post that position to the time that police officer is on the road, on their own, on the average is 8.22 months. That's a long time, 8 months. And it's already May, and if we're looking at, I have at least 2, from what I understand, 2 lieutenants that may leave in December. We should be hiring right now and start training, so when they leave, guess what? They slide right into the positions. Macomb runs 2 police academies a year. They graduate in May and December. It's all about timing. Once these candidates graduate from the police academy, we, as police chiefs, we fight with each other because we have a 30 to 45 day window to hire somebody. If not, the best qualified applicants, they're gone. They go to different departments all over the state. So 30 to 45 day window.
Have you mentioned before, how can we reduce that? I think you've said you'd like to be more nimble in hiring, which,
We talked about civil service revamping the language. A lot of that language, it doesn't even pertain anymore. It talks about,
I think the civil service is already working on that.
yes, a lot of that language, we changed some things that really helped us out a lot, but there's still other things that really need to be evaluated and corrected if we want to move forward with it.
You know,
Oh, where,
we've talked about it, I talked with George, and then I talked with Randy Altimus, and then I talked with Kathy Galen. So there's some things that are different between the charter and the civil service rules. So they're meeting now, and we're hopefully that we can get some of those changes to be approved by council and then go on a ballot for, because they have to be changed with ballot approval in November, right?
Yeah, there's just a lot of outdated stuff on there.
There is.
yeah, which part, I mean, cause like I get 30 days to advertise, that probably makes sense. I mean,
Well, for instance, if we have one opening, we can I think 3 people we can interview. So, to me, that doesn't make sense. If I have 10 people that want a job, I want to pick the best qualified applicants and interview them all, and then select at the end who's best fit for the position. But we're limited by the rules, and, we can,
Oh, I
it's,
So we're hoping to get some of the changes brought before Mr. Albright, and then also council for approval so that we can work with it. So we're working on it now.
yeah, but the main thing is I just wanted to show you an example that it takes about 8 months to hire somebody, the time you post it to the time that officer's on their own. The next slide, I did a historical staffing study here. These are budgeted positions. Now, you go back to 2001, we had 57 sworn officers here in Eastpointe. 39 of them, and that includes command, were assigned to road patrol duties. That's 39 police officers. Now, in 2011, 10 years later, you had 48 sworn officers, 35 on the road. 2014, you had 38 sworn police officers, 28 on the road. In 2019, we are budgeted for 40 officers. Right now, we have 29 on the road. So over time, we're down 10 officers on the road. And you ask yourself, is crime getting better? And the answer is no, it's not. Crime is becoming more violent, not in just this city, throughout the United States, and it's more technical. It takes more technology to start investigating some of these crimes out there. Over the years, we have lost our traffic safety unit. People ask, why aren't there any police cars on the side streets writing tickets? Because we don't have any extra police cars. We had a traffic safety unit that's gone. We had 2 officers assigned to that. We had a DARE program in the school. They taught 6th graders. I've had DARE my entire career, just a beautiful program. That was abolished. Community services, community-type policing job, abolished. Narcotics enforcement. I can't tell you how important that is. 3 officers were assigned to that. That is gone. And we had a special response team here. If we had to do an entry on a home, like for a high-risk search warrant, or look for somebody with a felony warrant, we would call our own squad in, usually 6 to 8 officers. They were trained in that kind of thing. We don't have that right now. I do have 2 officers assigned to the Macomb County SWAT team. However, they kind of pick and choose what they want to come out on. So, next up. So let's get into the priorities. I put 5 down. These are the most important priorities that I think, based on my assessment and speaking to everybody, including our stakeholders. Number 1 is increased staffing levels. That is vital in order to be successful here. We have to acquire patrol vehicles, building improvements, update the policies and procedures of the police department. I would like an independent audit of our property room and equipment purchases, and I will go into depth into each one of these. We'll start off with the staffing levels. Why is it an advantage to have increased staffing levels? Number 1, you're creating a succession plan. I talked about retirements. If I know someone's leaving, if they give me ample time to, hey, I'm leaving in 6 months, I should be looking at hiring somebody right now so we can fill the positions. Creation of the specialized units such as narcotics, MATS, that's auto theft, traffic enforcement, and school resources officers. Again, it allows the employees to grow. It's a marketing tool for the department. When you have a city this size You have to have a covert unit that works surveillance. If we have an area where they're stealing cars left and right or selling drugs out of homes, you need undercover officers in undercover vehicles doing surveillance, gathering intelligence. You want to reduce auto thefts, you put an officer in the auto theft squad. Traffic enforcement. I drive up and down these streets on my break sometimes, and you know what? The people are exactly right. People are blowing through stop signs. Matter of fact, the other day I wrote somebody for reckless driving. I went to his house and gave him a ticket for reckless driving. And you know what he said? I hate people and I hate driving. That was his excuse. Well, here's your ticket. He got a reckless driving ticket for myself. School resource officer. I'm used to my entire career, I've had police officers in the schools. I can't tell you how important that is. To have an officer in the school, and we talked about this at the PACE meeting, builds trust, it builds relationships. When there's a problem or something pending, typically those students will go to that police officer, inform that officer what's going on, and we can mitigate the problem before it happens. And it just builds relationships with the schools. It reduces crime, improves the quality of life in Eastpointe. Again, it gives employees to further develop skills. And again, I'm the director. I should be developing the employees. It's part of my job. It assists with marketing. We have to have a marketing tool. What makes Eastpointe stand out from other communities? Well, because we have this, and that. Increased training. You know, when you have officers working double shifts, and some of these guys, I mean, every time I come in, it's the same guys in the hallway. I go, don't you go home? Well, when we have a training date, they can't train because they have to work. They're forced over to work overtime. So they're getting cheated out of training opportunities. Reduce overtime and sick time. That's a give me. Reduces scheduling conflicts. And you know what, right now, I hate to say it, but we're becoming more of a reactive police department than proactive. We should be proactive. But we go to call for what the number of officers that we have here. And certainly it will increase officer safety and morale. Now I'm going to give you 3 scenarios of a staffing assessment, and it's based on officers, and I'm going to explain why I did this. Number 1, right now we have 40 budgeted positions, but we have 38 police officers, and I'm hoping to hire 2 in the next 3 weeks. Matter of fact, one's graduating from the academy. He was a police service aide here for a while, so I'm excited about that. So when we get the 2 officers, and everyone's on their own, this is what it's going to look like. We have 2 administration, and keep in mind, we don't work the road, the administrators. However, we do go on calls once in a while when there's no officers. We had a B&E or home invasion yesterday. Myself and the deputy chief are right there securing the outside of the resident while the officers went in the house. We do that from time to time. If we don't have enough people working, enough people, they're tied up on other runs. We have 5 lieutenants, 5 sergeants, 21. We'll have 21 patrol. That's 7, 8, 6. 7 on days, 8 on afternoons, 6 on midnights, which I don't like. 5 detectives again, and we'll put 2 in narcotics. What this impact does here with 40 that we're budgeted right now, you're running your shifts short. There's no officer in auto theft. You have no traffic enforcement officer. You have nobody in the schools. There's an increase in overtime because the overtime is through the roof. And the officers, they need time off too. They can't plan vacations because there's no time to schedule a vacation because they're always working, and it also impacts their training. Now, if you go to this next slide, if you increase the officers by 5 officers, you're going to have the same administration, lieutenant, sergeant, but look at your road patrol. You're going to 8, 8, and 8 on every shift. That means more patrol cars out in the road. The more visibility, the more they serve as a deterrent. Plus, it's easier for scheduling. The overtime goes down. The morale goes up. You have the same amount of detectives. You have your 2 drug guys. Now I can put a guy in traffic, a designated police officer run traffic, and I have a guy in auto theft. And the school liaison, I left at 0 because it depends on what kind of agreement we make with the school for funding purposes. Now, if you ask me, George, you've been in this business a long time. You've had time to sit down and talk to everybody. It's 7 months to assess everything. What is your vision? What is your model department within reason? Because if you ask me, hey, George, I'll give you 12 officers on each shift, I'll take it. But I'm not going to tell you that because I know we don't need 12 officers on each shift. But if you ask me, the model department, this is it, 47 officers. Everything's the same, except now I put 2 officers in the school, provided I get the appropriate funding from the schools. That's the middle school, even the elementary schools, and then the high school. Now, if you look at this chart here, you have 2 guys in narcotics. They will pay for their own equipment. They will pay for their salaries. When I was in Fraser and I ran the narcotics unit, we brought in $12 million. $12 million over the years in asset forfeitures. Your Matt's position, that's auto theft. I'm waiting, right now they're waiting on me. They're writing a grant. They're going to pay 60% of the officer's salary, plus provide them with a vehicle. The traffic position, that is a self-funded position, and then some. And again, I don't want to make this look like this is a revenue thing. We're writing tickets for policing for dollars. It doesn't work that way. But because it's not our obligation to make money for the city. I mean, but there's such things as enforcement, and we want people to be safe on the roads. In the school liaison, if the school decides to help us with funding, that will help. So, talking with the city manager, if you look at this, all in all, you're only hiring 1.4 officers, provided each one of these are covered. Number 2 priority is our patrol vehicles. We had hundreds of talks about this, and I'm sure I'm not going to get into this in detail, but the public should know that right now we have 13 marked police vehicles and semi-marked vehicles, 6 special use vehicles, 2 motorcycles, and 11 suppressed vehicles. That's a deputy chief's vehicle, my vehicle, detectives, etc. I looked at the chart as of April, I think it was April 13th. We have 9 vehicles that have 85,000 to 105,000 miles on them. 9. That's a lot of vehicles. One of our vehicles, we were just on a prisoner pickup last week, Dodge Charger. What happened? The engine's blown. It's at the Dodge dealership right now with a prisoner in the car. Right now, on the average, 30% of our vehicles, our police vehicles, are down. They are out of service for maintenance reasons. And we just replaced 2 of our patrol vehicles a little while ago. They had in excess of 100,000 miles on it, but it took it took about 7 months to get those. And I just want to clarify a few things. I looked at some of these budgets. I mean, we're only ordering some years 2 or 3 vehicles a year, and I'm looking at the number of cars, and it would take forever to replace all these cars. And some of the things to consider is these police vehicles serve as the office for the police officer. Many of these officers are in that car 5-6 hours a day. Some of these cars are used 16 to 24 hours a day. They idle all day. There's different driving patterns. You may have 3 or 4 officers assigned to a vehicle. They have different, certain officers brake differently, steer differently, and it just puts a lot of wear and tear in a car. Our cars, I mean, if we have 100,000 miles on a police car, that's like having 200,000 miles on our regular car. We use our police cars to pursue fleeing felons. And we went over this, the repairs for these vehicles. It's troubling. It is troubling. Now, let's say for this instance, this Dodge Charger with 96,000 miles has a blown motor, and they want $6,000 to fix it. I mean, it's time to strip it. I mean, that would be a poor investment to sink $5,000-$6,000 into a car with 96,000 miles. And you know what? The patrol vehicles, when you drive them around, they do represent the police agency. We don't want patrol vehicles with bumpers hanging and smoke coming out of the tailpipes. And, and it's a great morale booster for the officers. When they get a new car, and for most part, they take pretty good care of them. But again, they're in those cars all day. And we talked about enterprise lease program. If the council does elect to go with this system, I dealt with the system for 10 years. And I got to tell you, it works very well. You'll see the maintenance costs just vanish. And we have new cars. It depends on what kind of cycle we want to go on. We have new cars every few years. It works very well. And the main thing is the officers have a reliable car, a safe car. Next priority is building improvements. You know, our building was built in 1950s. And I got to tell you, when I bring in prisoners and they bring them in and I hear the prisoners complain about the building, you know, that's a problem. There's tiles, we have burst pipes, the tiles are stained, the carpet's soiled with dirt. The furniture's from probably 50, you know, and I'll be honest with you, we have tiles that are missing in the floors. It's embarrassing. You know, I'm the director, and I don't even meet people in my office because I'm embarrassed, to be honest with you. And it's all I want to do as a director is within reason. I don't want to put marble floors and make it look like this. This is beautiful in here. I just want to put some carpeting and some paint on the walls and maybe buy some new furniture for some of these rooms. When you come in the lobby, that's the first thing you see. I mean, we had a door laying on the ground. You know, it was laying on the ground in the lobby. And I told the lady we have an open door policy. But, you know, it's just, you want it to make the department look somewhat professional because it's a professional agency and it reflects who we are and it reflects the city too. Because a lot of people that come in that department, they're not even from Eastpointe, and they come in, they're going, what is going on here? So I'm just asking within reason, you know, to make some adjustments here. The greatest risk in our department is our holding cells. You know, I want to make a safe place for our prisoners. I want to make a safe place for our police officers. And the nice thing about it is we already acquired a $19,000 grant to make some improvements in there, but obviously we're going to need a few more dollars, and I'll go over that in a minute, to make it right. I want to buy a body sensor that can pick up a paper clip in your shoe, so if any prisoners are bringing in any kind of metal, it will pick it up. We want new cameras, digital cameras in there with a new server. I like to paint the cells, and I like to put an intercom system in there because all day the prisoners are screaming in there. And we have to hear it in our offices. If they just had a button to press, they can talk to the supervisor, and he can take care of their needs. Projected costs for this, I mean, the exterior too. I mean, if you ever played that game, Don't Break the Ice, if you look at our wall around the dumpster, there's blocks missing. So I'm just waiting for someone to hit the right block, and it just crashes on the ground. You know, some just cosmetic things outside. The interior improvements, just to make it look somewhat professional. I have $32,000 in our lockup area. It's $55,000, but you take the $19,000 off. It's a great start. I know we're talking about a new building, but I've been involved with new buildings. I know it takes a long time if it happens, but for now I would just like to make small improvements just to be more professional. Our policies and procedures, I mean, that's our Bible that we go by. A lot of them need updating. They really do. And there's a company out there, I don't know if you ever heard of it, it's called Lexipol. It's a renowned company. It's a risk management company. Gordon Graham's the owner. He speaks all around the United States, probably the best speaker I ever heard. But they have 150 model police policies, and what they would do is, and this seems somewhat expensive, but they provide us with daily training bulletins. So the officers, every day, they're going to get 2 minutes of training, and they have to acknowledge that they received and they understood the training. That helps us with lawsuits. One day I would like to go through the accreditation process here and make the department, both police and fire, accredited. Anytime there's a Supreme Court ruling or a Michigan court ruling that impacts our policies, they notify us so we can update that. And you can also, the officers are allowed to review policies on their cell phones for training purposes. Now, that's $13,923 a year. That's based on sworn officers. Now, they offer cross-referencing, and what that is they will take all our policies. They have all their model policies that somewhat match our policies, and they're going to make recommendations on every single policy to bring it up to the national standards. The Support Plus, it's $69.50. It's a lot of money. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't think we need that right now. The cross-referencing, absolutely, but the Support Plus, it's a lot of money. Basically, they offer one-on-one support, and it's 50 hours worth. Next is the property room audit. This is something I don't understand. The property room here at the city of Eastpointe has never been audited. Nobody knows. Everyone I asked says, no, we never had an audit here. And when people hear the word audit, they think that's a bad word, but you know, it's a good thing. Because how do I know as a chief that property is being properly stored there? What about weapons, narcotics, and biohazards? How about homicide cases? How do I know that all the property's in that room that should be in there and if it's not missing? I don't know that. So what I would like to do is bring in an independent company and have them audit the room, and basically they're going to tell me what's right, what's wrong, and make recommendations. We change our policies, and we're good. I like to do this every other year if possible. A couple companies have called. It could fluctuate anywhere from $7,500 to $12,000 to do this. But again, I don't know if certain property is missing. I would never know that unless someone came in and independently start pulling reports, seizure forms, and cross-checking that. And last is equipment purchases. We need some range improvements. I don't know if any council members have been down on the range. The ventilation system, it has to be replaced. I mean, it's great having your own range. I got to tell you, I mean, it's kind of spoils the officers, but you know, they have to be able to breathe down there when they're shooting. You get all that lead, and it needs to be thoroughly cleaned down there. $18,000 is the fee, but honestly, I mean, if we're going to keep making improvements, it could cost up to $100,000 to keep that range up to date. But right now, it's 18. The officers are requesting, they have some exercise equipment. A lot of officers are trying to get into shape for the summer, and they want the proper machines. The machines are outdated. I had a company come out to do an assessment. They drew up a room. They told us what kind of equipment. It's about $9,500 for that. If I get this SRT team, which is not a SWAT team, but it's a special response team, we're going to need the heavy vest, the ballistic vest. That's $16,200. That's nine vests in all. And for our special investigation unit, half of that should be paid by the grant we get from the Department of Justice. And computers, I don't know, we really don't have a schedule for computer replacement. Everyone's computer's different. I've asked for a schedule. No one seems to know when they were replaced. You know, we have different printers, and you know, I like to be on the same. Just maybe if we can replace 1/3 of our computers, you know, every year. I mean, I think that would work out better because some of these are just they're just not good. But all in all, you know, I've been in this business a long time, and this is all I know, to be honest with you. I don't golf, I don't fish, I do police work and firework. You know, I've had a great career. I want to make a great career here. The law enforcement profession and even the fire profession, unfortunately, it's dying. There's so many trades open up right now. They're paying so much more money. And who wants to get shot for $14 or $15 an hour, go into a building and burn? You know, and it's the generation too. A lot of these kids, they just don't have that work ethic. But again, hiring is so important here. It's so important to set the tone for years to come here, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do the right things. We're trying to hire the right people. We're trying to provide an environment where there's opportunity, you have good equipment. You know, it's all about image. And here's the main thing too, our stakeholders, our residents. You know, nobody wants to live in fear. You know, the residents have families. There's nothing worse than watching a car going 100 miles an hour down the street, or these break-in and enterings are happening all the time, or you buy a nice car and it gets stolen. Nobody wants that. But you ask me, how do you fix it? Well, if you stick to this plan, whatever you decide, I can fix this. The police officers can fix this. It's simple. This is simple to me. You just tell me, hey, George, here it is. We're going to give you the authority to do this, this, and that. I have it all set. I just press a button. Next day, we go to business here. I want to do whatever I can here. And again, I'll say this again. This is it for me. This is my last tour of duty. I'm done after this. I want to leave a legacy. I want this department to, I want it to be in the right direction for years to come. When you lose all these nine people in the next few months, you're going to have all new people on here for years and years and years. And I want them to stay there throughout their whole career. And more importantly, I want this to be a safe community. And for the most part, and people that say, oh, it's all Eastpointe's got the crime, tell me where you move to and there's no crime. It's called fantasy land. There's crime everywhere, but we can keep it in check. That's the nice thing about it, and we are. I mean, we're making arrest after arrest. We keep it in check, one at a time. That's how we do it. But again, is all I'm asking for is additional tools to be even better, because we can be better. I can assure you we can, but I'm only as good as the authority that you give me. And with that, if you have any questions on the police budget, I'd be more than happy to answer.
I had a question on computers. Your cars have computers in the cars as well, right?
Yes, every car has a mobile data computer. I believe we have 13 of them, and we have to pay a monthly fee to Clemens for that. It's like $300 some a computer. Plus, they have modems in the cars, printers for tickets.
And when you were talking about auditing policies and procedures, that said,
Lexipol.
those are the policies and procedures, but you were talking about, don't you have a group that works with the state police
You
officers?
talk about the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police.
Right.
Accreditation.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
sorry, it was accreditation
Yes.
I was talking
And
about.
this will be a good start. Once we got our policies set up, maybe, and that's a lot of work to be an accredited department, but it can be done. It can. But this is a start. We get our policies up to date. They meet national standards. And because they're gonna come in and they're gonna review all our policies. That's the first thing they're gonna do.
So maybe, Michael, you might remember, don't we, haven't we been replacing computers as part of the capital improvement? So many per year?
We've
Didn't
done them all
we-
at once, at least the last time, but I have
I
a,
don't think we've had a steady plan.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
talked to
I don't
Randy
remember of a study plan either. I remember like periodically like replacing a couple of computers
every-
here or there.
Yeah, I think.
I don't even think there was ever really budgeted. It was budgeted last year for City Hall, but I think we denied it if I'm not mistaken.
right, yeah, we pushed it back at
Right,
least to
pushed
this
it.
Didn't we
year.
have a plan initially on a capital improvement? Randy, I know, put it in because he wanted to update them on a
Yeah,
routine basis.
well, actually, I think there might be something in this year's budget. I believe there's 300,000 in IT for computers. The plan had been every 3 years to replace the computers citywide. The last time we did it, I believe some of the court and police PCs were missed. And then what was gonna happen this year was taken out of the budget. So we're now into year 4.
Why was it taken out of the budget?
Because council took it out during the budget meeting. So we did not purchase any computers this fiscal year, and we now have that replacement in again for fiscal year 20.
Yeah, the computers were when Ryan was here. Ryan was the city manager, and we were looking to balance like
You know, that's when I-
600,000 and.
That's when I had my total need done, so I missed one of those council meetings. So what percentage of the computers would you recommend replacement? Or are you talking about the vehicle as well as
We're gonna
desk?
A lot of the vehicle computers, honestly, they're in good working shape. There's a few of them that we have budgeted to replace next fiscal year. However, we just hired our records supervisor. He has a pretty good background in computers. That's what he does. And he was asking me a bunch of questions today, and said some of these computers are 6, 7 years old, and he was talking about Windows 10, and I say, that's one thing I'm not good at is computers. Windows 10, Windows 9, I don't know. It's gonna be mandated that we all go to Windows 10, and from what I understand, it's kind of an interesting program to get used to, but, our computers are so slow here. I mean, sometimes I have to log on, and you can ask Martha Schroeder like 9 times before it lets me on. And it's just, I don't know, our phones.
You just gotta remember your password, George.
Our phones have been, they're all staticky. Half the departments are, nobody knows what the problem is. I don't even use my phone at my desk because it's, you know when you pull the cord out of your phone and you hear that static noise? Half our phones sound like that. Comcast has been out 4 times. We still don't know, we can't find what's going on.
If I may, Mayor, to remind council, as part of the contract that you approved for the IT consultant, the vendor has until the end of May to prepare a citywide capital improvement plan for information technology, which will also include the police department. And we do have money in the proposed budget to cover costs. If it's not enough, then we'll maybe have to add more, but that CIP plan is due by May 31st. I know in terms of budget timing, it may be a little bit off, but at least we'll get a thorough review with recommendations.
So George, I know you love to stand, but it's driving me crazy because you got 2 police officers over there and 1 over here, and they need to sit down. It's just too long to stand, especially if you're working.
Melanie's one of our newest police officers.
I know she is.
So under your, the 45 officer plan, what's the command to patrol ratio on that?
Well,
Because I think over time, we've been a little heavy on command.
I'd have to do, I didn't bring my calculator, but the thing is, here's what's different here. You know,
I can do the math for it. It's 1 for every 4.5 officers. You essentially have 10 command, and I'm not counting the deputy chief and the chief. You have 10 command for every patrolman.
With the 45 officers?
With the 45, yes.
Okay.
and what's kind of different here is, when we have prisoners here, and we usually do every day, there has to be someone in that building, and typically it's the lieutenant or the sergeant with that prisoner. We can't have a police service aide monitoring prisoners. Sometimes we have 10 prisoners in there. So if there's a problem, that command officer is right there to take care of the problem. And then if there's an issue on the road where someone's calling for a supervisor, that second supervisor who's on duty goes out on the road or is already out on the road doing patrol, can handle the problem on the road. But we need somebody in that station that's trained to handle any kind of prisoner issues, whether it's medical or if there's an assault in the cell.
So does Fraser still have their DARE program?
No, what I did before I left, we canceled the DARE program, and I came up with another program. It was like a community outreach program where the officer went in the schools, instead of focusing just on 6th graders, every grade, we taught certain topics from 1st grade to 12th grade, age-appropriate topics. This way, the officer can mingle and get to know all the kids in the school from 1st to 12th, not just 6th grade.
Because I've done a lot of research on the DARE program and the effectiveness of it, and they said there was generational changes, and it wasn't really as effective as it had been when it was first initiated.
It's just hard to gauge whether or not it's working or not. If we save one life, I guess it's working, but I think it's important to interact with all the students instead of focusing on one grade level.
Okay.
In the line item, why does the supervisor non-union go from 41,000 to 164,000? The records?
One was record supervisor. Supervisor, non-union. Record supervisor. Well, what's the department number, 301 police?
Yeah.
Non-union, record supervisor. I think Martha's considered for budgeting purposes in that category. And she's non-union. Eric, deputy chief.
Oh, that's right. He was removed
He
from,
got switched over.
Yes.
gotcha. Thank you.
So real quick, back to DARE real quick. If with the school liaison officers, would we be implementing something like DARE
We would sit down.
through those
Provided
officers?
that we get into the schools, we would sit down with the superintendent and determine, they have to tell us what their needs are, and we can customize any program that's age appropriate for any grade level. Whether it's a DARE program, whether it's, we can talk about cyberbullying, we did classes on sex texting, just the ramifications of it. We'd go into classrooms and teach the students how to interview for jobs, like 12th graders. We can do something like that. I mean, I have topic after topic. We can teach any grade level, but I like, the school's gonna have to have a lot of input too, and whatever they want a DARE program, we can put on a DARE program, but a DARE program, one thing about the DARE program, it's you gotta follow their guidelines. There's some training involved, out-of-state training, and, I just think, based on my experience, that if we hit all grade levels instead of just one, it'd be more impactful.
Let me ask, Dr. Early, doesn't the school still have their social workers that do all the work with, cyberbullying? I know a year or so ago you had several, so it would be really good if you could work with the social workers in the school system as well.
Yeah, we can-
And I would think that, it would be possible to get grants to work, to provide some of the, particularly in school, as long as they see that schools and city are working together.
Anything's possible. We can put on any
Anything's-
program that the school wants.
So you want to talk about the fire department too?
Yeah, I can get there.
Well, let's go back for a minute. I was trying to let everybody speak first. Now, you said the Lexipol is a yearly price?
It's a yearly price. It's expensive, but that could impact our insurance rates. Our insurance rates can go down. When we go to court, let's say we have an officer shooting, or that could help us out. And we're up to standard. These are national standards. We're keeping up with the national standards, keeping up with Supreme Court cases, Michigan Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court cases. And the policies and procedures it's our Bible that we have to follow every day. We have to have rules and regs that we need to follow every day. And if they're out of date, or someone's not keeping track of them, then it's not gonna do us any good. And it's gonna hurt us in the event we do have civil litigation.
Now, with the, in here, I didn't see anything about body cameras.
I'm putting that off to the next budget, because body cameras, it is somewhat new technology, but it's very expensive. You're talking for a department this size, I think, Centerline just went to them. I talked to their director. I wanna say they spent $150,000 for that small department. So I would imagine the city of Eastpointe, we do body cameras. I think we're gonna spend well over $200,000, but, our insurance carrier will pay a portion of that. And, but there's certain things that I need to do more, I guess, gotta study more things, especially when it comes to freedom of information, when that camera has to be on, when it can go off. They certainly don't want the camera to be on 24/7, and the officers' personal conversations, on their phones or in their car, it could be subject to FOIA. There's still a lot of gray areas in that. That's why some departments are holding off.
I'm really
Okay.
for it. I heard, I'm sorry, do you have another question?
Yeah, about the cameras that's inside of there. Did you put that in here too, about the cameras that's inside the holding area?
Yes, that's part of.
That's part of that in there?
Yes.
Okay.
New cameras, digital cameras. The cameras aren't expensive, it's the server. So the main thing is that metal detector. We had a prisoner, it was a few months ago, he had a screw in his mouth. He hit a screw underneath his tongue, and he started cutting himself. That body sensor, it's like an airport. You stand and you turn around, and it will pick it up. I put a paper clip in the bottom of my shoe, and it picked up the paper clip. And actually I showed the court what kind of technology, and they're interested too, and they're gonna give us a discount if we buy 2 of them. And Roseville has the same system in their court, but this one will be more updated.
Okay. Now, we hired those 6 people that you said that you had grants for. You still won't have, they won't be in patrol though. You still be lacking patrol, correct?
Which 6 people?
You said that you have people, and let me see, what page is this on? You have grants for certain parts of the police department.
Oh,
Like
you're talking about-
narcotics, auto theft.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, here's what the MAT's position, that's auto theft. They will pay 60% of the officer's salary. I already talked to the lieutenant in charge of the unit. Matter of fact, I talked to him last Friday. They're waiting on us to make a decision. They will provide the officer with a car. The traffic position, if we increase our staffing level, that will pay for itself. The school liaison, it depends on what kind of funding the school wants to provide. And that's gonna be important for that. In our narcotics unit, if they do it right, that would pay for they could pay for all their overtime. It could pay for all the department equipment. When I was in Fraser, we didn't pay for one capital improvement in 20 years. 20 years. And we did a lot of gambling cases, though, and that's, I mean, every police car, we bought a $700,000 fire truck with gambling money, because the law says we can. We even bought an ambulance with gambling money, $175,000 for an ambulance, so.
So, Randy, don't we have money in the drug forfeiture account currently?
Not much. It's been depleted. Our drug unit was disbanded, probably, well, probably 5 years ago now. There was some issues and, the officers were let go.
But we still have some money in that account, right?
It's about, drug-related is about 100,000 is all that's left. There's some OWI money, but there's different rules surrounding how that can be
But
spent.
it still might provide some of the equipment that he's asking for.
The mayor, the drug forfeiture fund is being used to pay for the patrol vehicles for this fiscal year's budget, so it's already spoken for.
Well, you didn't tell us that.
Plus the canine, it was $8,000.
And K-9's in there as well.
We did get a $500 discount for those.
Yes, we did get the
training of
discount.
the K-9 also?
The academy and the, I want to say, the academy and the dog was $8,000.
So
So that's in this fiscal year or next fiscal year for,
We just received the bill, so.
no,
that's-
I know for the dog, for the K-9, I'm talking about the
It was in,
drug forfeit. For next.
We do have K-9 expenses for, I'm going to call it operating expenses for K-9 in next fiscal year's drug forfeiture fund, and we are also funding the acquisition of police vehicles out of drug forfeiture fund in next fiscal year, because neither of those expenses will occur during this fiscal year. The acquisition costs and training costs of K-9 will be funded this fiscal year, because those costs have been incurred or will be by June 30th.
No, with the traffic, why don't we ask for one traffic officer?
I'll take 2. I'll take 3. Honestly, you want to make, I'm trying to be reasonable. Again, I just want to be reasonable. 2 would be great. Every day, I'd have people, you make a complaint, I put that officer on your street. Simple as that. We have the speed trailer out there. I mean,
Speed trailers on
some
my
people-
street right
Some
now.
people just speed to make it light up red, you know, they do that. But it deters you for what, maybe 10 seconds? Speed trailers are great for studies. You know, if you want to conduct a study on a certain road, the average speeds, but,
Well, if it's self-funded, why didn't you ask for two?
I'll take 2. Again, I want to be reasonable. I don't want to scare anybody. If it works
Well, I
out
live
well,
here. I need you to put
provide
2
you
on there.
You know, if all these things work out, you're gonna get monthly reports from me. You're gonna know exactly what's going on, if it's working or not. And you know what, if it's working, hey, if, like the dog, if the dog works out great, I like to get 2 dogs. I like to have a dog on 2 shifts instead of 1. Because right now, the dog would be assigned the afternoon shift, because that's the most active shift. If the traffic unit, if the traffic officer works out great, then we can readdress it the following year. But again, I just want to be reasonable right now.
I mean, I think it'll be difficult to assess that because it wouldn't be fair for us to say how much is that one officer writing. That wouldn't be fair. So
And I don't want it to look like a cash register. I just want to clean up these speeding cars, people driving in a reckless manner. It needs to be, it certainly needs to be addressed, that people have legit complaints, because sometimes I go on the other social media site and I just, it's one complaint after another about the cars, and they're right. They're right. I can only put, if I put an officer, and trust me, our officers go on to side streets, but they sit 10 minutes and guess what? They get a police call, they have to go. And it's, you know, it's not fair for the resident, and it's certainly not fair for the officer. I like to have somebody on the street for at least an hour or 2 a day.
Yeah. I want to say hire them for the money, but I'm saying the money is out there because they're speeding and they're about to hit somebody. So it's evident that we're going to get money because it's a lot in Eastpointe.
I'm not putting a lot of stock in the speculation of what the returns will be because the main thing about that is people paying the tickets. Because we might write a ton of tickets, but it doesn't mean anything if they just ignore it.
right.
The 60% grant funded for the mats, you're talking about Macomb County,
Yes.
right?
Yes, sir.
And they're the ones who would provide a car?
Yes.
How long does that grant funding last? And do we have to,
I believe every year they renew the grant. And the average, he told me, the lieutenant, it's usually anywhere from 50 to 60% in funding. That's the average. Actually, he said this year 60% is good. I think it was at 50, and sometimes 55. But they give them a car, and but what's nice about that, there's like 7 police agencies in Macomb County that are in this unit, and if Eastpointe's getting hit in a certain area with auto thefts, they're gonna bring their whole team here. And they may spend a week or two in town here until we hit the crews, because these are organized people. I mean, they know how to get in your car when they're locked, and you know, they jack the car up and take the 4 tires off in within 2 minutes, because that's what they do. They're good. I gotta hand them, they're good. But we can correct that.
is,
Right now, they won't come here unless we have a, well, I take that back. Sometimes they will come here, but they won't spend the time that they're supposed to. But if we have an interest, we provide them with an officer, that's an interest for them. It's gonna just motivate them to wanna come to the community because they wanna keep that officer.
is there like any requirements that we maintain that, like if grant funding were to end, that we maintain that officer and that unit?
If the grant funding ended, the officer goes back in patrol, in a normal patrol.
Wasn't Kaiser,
Yes, he was in Mats. And again, it's a great position. You learn so much about auto theft. Not just auto theft, a lot of our reported auto theft, they're fraud. They're fraudulent cases, and they investigate that. Let's say you have a neighborhood that 10 cars were broken into. Just because a car didn't get stolen, they'll still come in here because it's an organized ring breaking into these cars. And we have technology. If you're pawning stuff off at certain pawn shops, we have the technology to go in there, as long as we got serial numbers and things like that, we can find out who's pawning the property off.
Now,
Most people do, they break into cars and they pawn stuff off, so.
I do have another question on the line item budget. I don't know if you have that in front of you.
I do.
I think this might have been by mistake. The overtime, the department requested 175, and the city manager's approved it as 275.
Not a mistake. I realized after I was advised that we only have a limited number of training officers, that even if council authorized this ideal department budget, due to the number of retirements that we have planning, and due to the fact that we're probably not going to be able to hire anyone else out of the academy at this point in time, based on council not acting on the request last week, realistically, we will probably be operating short in this department for another year at least, if we don't hire people now to replace those that we anticipate to retire. If they stay, then we will be able to implement the special units even sooner. But the key is how we're going to be, when are we replacing officers? And if we're not replacing officers, we will not be able to reduce overtime.
but I think you misunderstood the fact about the council disapproving of hiring a police officer. I think it was hiring him without seeing the involvement within the budget.
Right, and my understanding was that council wasn't going to be revisiting this until the budget was adopted, which would be in July. That was my understanding of the motion. If I misunderstood that, then I apologize.
To table it till after we had our budget meeting.
It was to integrate it into the budget meeting. It wasn't to deny it.
And I misspoke if I said deny. My interpretation of council's action was to postpone this until after the budget was adopted, which would have been July.
We would not hire him until after July.
And that's where the problem comes in, because they're available now.
But this number was also here before we even had that meeting about that motion.
It was, however, I also realized that we would not be able to get officers into regular positions until we're already 6 months at least into the calendar year under the best of circumstances. So overtime will not be able to be reduced as much as anticipated. And this discussion was held between the director and I after the budget request was submitted. when we were talking about, well, the mechanics of making everyone fill these vacancies. Theoretically, we could have had, 13 vacancies to fill, and it wasn't feasible. And that's where we said, well, we need to increase that overtime.
I have an issue with increasing the amount we're allotting for overtime and giving all the new, one of the selling points on the positions is reducing overtime costs. We've already gone and hired more patrol than we have in years past because we just haven't been able to meet the amount that was budgeted for, and you've done an excellent job at working to get those positions filled. The fact that we're staffed higher than we were last year, overtime should be going down. It does not make sense to me to budget, and
But we're going to be losing officers again, so we're going backwards.
And a lot of that has to do with the emergencies too. You may have 100 different emergencies this year than you didn't have last year, and you have an emergency, especially you have a homicide or someone killed in a car accident, you're bringing the whole detective bureau in. And lately, we've been bringing everybody in on some of this stuff. That costs a lot of money, and it does. And you have one officer that calls in sick on the shift, that's overtime. We had 2 officers that were injured. I think it was 3 officers when I started here. There was overtime, there was 3 slots of overtime every single day for 30 days. That's a lot of money. And if our staffing levels were increased, you wouldn't see that overtime. That overtime number would certainly deplete. But again, it takes 8 months for that officer to be on his own. So in the meantime, you're gonna pay the overtime, and once they're on their own, then you'll see cost savings with that.
Well, I don't think council was telling you last time that we wouldn't do it, but I think Michael is right to say we're looking at overtime. We would rather probably hire somebody, but we wanted to see the budget before we went ahead and hired somebody.
Well, me having a background in policing, that's why I'm the only one who voted to go forward with it. Because even though he says it takes 8 months to hire a police officer, just because you hire a police officer, that doesn't mean they're gonna stay. We gotta put that in, you know what I'm saying? And some of them don't always pass. So we still need to have a succession plan, because I remember when I went to the academy, some people went to Lavanya, and there was a lady who just didn't like Lavanya. She went through the whole training, did all that, spent Lavanya's money, and still didn't want to do it. So just because we're doing this 8 months, we can hire 6 officers, and all 6 might not pass the training.
It happens.
Then what we gonna do?
Every
So that
department,
is why I do agree on the overtime. Every police department, I just looked at Washington on the news yesterday. They're trying to hire 24 police officers because they can't handle it. When I went to the Wayne County Sheriff's Department, we got ordered almost 4 or 5 times a week. I couldn't barely spend time with my kids. These people are out on the streets. We were in the jail, so these people are actually locked up. These people running around. So I get the whole policing game, and I get the money game too. So it's about.
it's just hard to predict emergencies, and, you know, the easiest way to do overtime is you gotta do a historical number. Usually I go back 3 years and do the average. I mean, there's really no way to gauge what you're gonna pay in overtime. You just try to take your best average out of 3 years. That's it. And you're right too, because we may train people, they're in their 16th week, and guess what? We're washing them. They just can't cut it. So you just lost that investment, and that happens all around here. I mean, that's why you have a field training program to wash out people that just, you know, they're just not cut out to do this job, especially in this community.
Any more questions?
Oh, yeah.
Carter, you look like you're ready to ask something.
I don't know. I don't think the traffic's gonna be self-funded. I think that's quite ambitious. How much of the? I mean, you're writing tickets $50 an hour all year, right?
Councilman, I can tell you that when I was in Pontiac, one of the positions that we reinstituted with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office was the traffic program, and they also did weights and measures for the trucks, which I know Director has been referencing, and I was apprehensive, as you were as well. In month number 5, they were already 100% reimbursed. The truck traffic, and I know we've got it on Gratiot. I see it coming out of my window, through my window. We've got truck traffic on 8 Mile with the weights. I'm sure we've got trucks cutting through neighborhoods that shouldn't be cutting through the neighborhoods. So you're not really going to be getting the money per se from the average speeder, and that's really going to be their focus. But when you hit a truck, what's an average truck ticket?
Some of those, it depends the size of the truck. If they're overweight, it could be $3,000-$4,000 a truck.
And you get 100% of that $3,000 or
You get a lot of
$4,000.
that money back.
Right, because these guys, that's their livelihood. So if they don't pay it, their bosses will pay it.
No, but I mean, sometimes we send part of it to the state
We get a lot
or
of
to the
that
county.
money, and then part of that, I think it's in this, I'm certain it's in the statute, you can take a certain percentage of the fines and put it in a separate fund for motor carrier enforcement and buy equipment or pay, for some overtime, things of that nature. But, motor carrier enforcement is a very, I see trucks all the time on the roads and they're tearing the roads up. They shouldn't even be on these side streets. But that's part of this traffic thing too. The officer would be cross-trained in motor carrier enforcement.
So like I said, I did have your apprehension when the sheriff requested it in Pontiac, and 5 months, data was clear. It paid for itself within 5 months.
I apologize. Did you say how much the chaplain was requesting?
There's a couple, I was approached and by the Reverend Friedman, and he would like to look at some options to be compensated. I guess, he's been in this community for 13 years. I've known him a few years coming to the meetings, and I know what he does for the community, but it's, he would like to come up with a plan, or maybe he gets an hourly, maybe, let's say he goes to an event, he's requesting $75 an hour, like a PACE meeting, or counseling for a police officer or firefighter coming to or going to the hospital. One of our officers just lost one of their parents. He was at the hospital, and that means a lot. Going to the chamber meetings, it's just a lot of time out of someone's day and doing it over and over and over, and then demanding him to do more. Well, he's got a life too on the side, but he would just like to look at some kind of reasonable compensation plan.
I believe.
Counsel, I actually, in the budget document I submitted to you on March 29th with the detail and the explanation, I'm going from memory, in the police 301, I want to say it was in the professional services area, contracted services, low 800s. You're going to find a line item number. I don't remember what number we put in there, but it was put in there because at the time that this was proposed, we didn't know if the chaplain would be considered an employee of the city or if he would be considered a contractor of the city. It hadn't really...
I'm going to be honest. It's a volunteer position. I think it's odd to
It is.
consider compensation for it.
It has come up before in a legal, and there was something found in the legal issues that we could not compensate him for. I believe it was probably, let me see, probably 2007 or 8.
And that's why I'm saying we did not have a definitive answer as we were investigating as to how this could actually be accomplished. I put a number in the budget. I don't remember what it was, but it was identified in that March 29th.
12,000.
Did I get 12,000 in there?
That was working X amount of hours a week. I think it was 25 hours a week at $15 an hour. But, I'll be honest with you. 25 hours a week is a lot of hours. I think it would be more feasible to pay per event or function than, because who's going to keep track of that?
I think many times we call him and ask him if he would go to the hospital to meet with somebody and so forth. And that takes a lot of time out of his personal time. But
It does. He's all over the place.
to go to an event, I would have a problem with that. But we now have three chaplains, right? So
Started.
Pastor Lancaster and the other person as well, so. So if you do it for one, you would have to do it for all three, and I think that becomes where the problem lies. Because each of their training is not the same, is not identical, so.
That was just something we threw out there. Again, he's been here several years, and I just know what he does for the community and other communities.
And he
around here.
does.
And actually, at some point, it would probably be thrown back to council in one way or another, because if chaplain position is an employee, well, that's subject to civil service. So then you have to go through the civil service testing and the classification position. If the chaplain is a contractor, well, then that contract would have to be approved by city council. Then we have to be concerned about workers' compensation issues and how that's going to be handled, and liability insurance, because employees are covered under city liability, whereas contractors are not. So once we get into that type, as a volunteer, no issues, covered. Workers' comp,
But I believe that
liability.
since we first investigated, James has done a great deal more additional training. I think he's finished with his degree now. He's also gone through the academy a couple times, so
He's
I mean,
got great credentials.
he does.
And, and again, he does spend a lot of time here, and it's away from the family, and it's becoming more demanding, the position.
So I was thinking that maybe, I always worry about James being very, very stressed in the job because he's pulled at all different angles. But I was hoping the addition of Kevin Lancaster and then also the other one that might reduce some of that. And hopefully, we may end up getting other people that would be willing to go through the chaplain training program. All right, fire department,
He's ready for fire?
those poor guys, that's why they're not here.
This will be easy. Firefighters are my friend.
Thank you all for staying.
Thanks. Well, I'm gonna do the same format. In respect to the fire department, I listed 3 goals. One's to increase training, digitize training records with a focus on development and succession planning. I'd like to see the battalion chiefs going to more leadership training and the lieutenants there. And unfortunately, they've been short-staffed. Now we're at the right staffing levels. They couldn't take the time off to go to training, but I think it's vital that they do go to these leadership schools. They have a fire staff in command. I'd like to see every one of them go to that. When I talk about succession planning, right now, we don't have a fire inspector. I mean, the previous inspector announced his retirement. Nobody sent anybody to a school to be a fire inspector, and unfortunately, these schools aren't offered that often, maybe once or twice a year. So the idea is, and I'll talk more about it, I would like to have 2 employees trained as fire inspectors. In the event one can't perform the duties or leaves suddenly, there it is. It's all set up, and it's very cheap to send somebody. It's somewhat time consuming, but we should have a backup plan. Create a stronger fire prevention outreach. Our fire department does a lot with the schools, trunk or treat. They do the puppet shows. I would like them to be more involved in the community, especially their staffing's up again. Put on programs for the business community. Put on programs for our senior communities. Maybe go, deal with the seniors. We used to teach the seniors how to shoot a fire extinguisher. They loved it. Just little things like that. What to do in a medical emergency. And put on programs for our residents. There's no reason why we can't have, quarterly programs for each one of these disciplines here. Improve operational effectiveness through our mutual aid, auto aid partners. I'd like to see more combined training. We don't get that because it was the lack of staff. Our fire department, we have auto aid with Roseville and St. Clair Shores. Our guys should be training with those departments, not once a year, but several times a year. And also, we have 3 platoons over there. I would like to see all the platoons train as one once in a while because they're all at the fire scene. You don't know what they're learning on different platoons. It could be something different. They should be training all at once, but of course, it's going to cost some overtime. But if it's only a couple times a year, it's well worth it. So those are the 3 main goals there. If you look at the fire department statistics, I'm sorry, I've been here since 7:30. Calls for service for our fire department, 5,321 a year, 5,000 runs. That's a lot of runs. 5 square mile city, that is a lot of runs. Structure fires, 51. A lot of structure fires. Most cities, if they have 10 structure fires a year, that's a lot. Other fires, 81. Fire-related responses, 1,522. They have 3,400 plus medical runs a year. They go on medical runs. They're all trained paramedics. And I know they're busy because I hear the sirens all day out the window. That's a lot of runs. And some of the run examples, other things they do is gas leaks, fire alarms, chemical spills, down wires, smell of smoke, unauthorized burning, and vehicle extrication. So, all in all, we have a very busy fire department. Budgeted positions, there's 23, and out of that 23, I'm one of them. And again, I'm half. I should count as a half, but we have 23. Right now I have 2 firefighters in training. They're almost done with their training. One was just released. He's on his own, which is good. So right now you have 2 administrators, the director, the deputy chief. We have 3 platoons, so you have a battalion chief in each platoon, 3 lieutenants, 3 sergeants. You have a total of 12 firefighters and 1 part-time clerk that's working out very well over there. First time in several years, we are at our budgeted staffing levels. You have 7, 7, 7 in your administration. You'll start seeing the overtime coming down, and then the training go up, which is the whole goal. Priorities. This is a big one. Create a separate fire marshal position, and I will explain all these in a minute. Vehicle replacements, address capital needs, building improvements, improve standard operating guidelines, and equipment purchases. And I'll go over this. Fire marshal position. I believe this is crucial, and that's all I'm asking for is 1 position. It will be a 40-hour position. They will have to go through the testing process. You need 1 employee is used exclusively to do fire inspections and work with our building department. You know, again, look at us now. Nothing. There's nothing. 7 months. Nobody. You need somebody to do that. The deputy chief, fire chief, Nick, he needs to be there updating policies and procedures, dealing with the day-to-day complaints from his employees, working with his employees, going to the county meetings. That's what he should be doing in that position. However, when your deputy chief is gone all day on fire inspections, you never see him. Nobody has any communications with them. That's why it's vital that we have this position. The fire chief can perform administrative duties. I talked about that. You know, they can start targeting, you know, we'd like to have a greater ISO rating here. I believe right now we're at a 3. In our neighboring communities like Roseville and Shores are a 2. That just saves money for our residents. And there's so much involved in ISO ratings, but that could be a target goal. It's another learning opportunity for one of the firefighters in the department. You know, it's nice to have that type of position. And again, we'll be achieving our goals, implementing succession plans as it relates to building inspections. This fire marshal can also be trained as an arson investigator, just another tool for the department. And the main thing is, you know, we want to bring these businesses in compliance, and the way we do it now, it doesn't make sense. If you have 1 person, that's their main job, they can do more inspections a year. They're making the businesses more safe for the employees and more safe for our firefighters when they go on a fire run there. And it reduces risks and increases safety. Vehicle replacement. What I did was an inventory. I mean, everyone's aware, they've been to the fire department. The number one, that's 1990, this is the issue. You have a 1999 platform truck. That's the big truck with the bucket. It's a great tool. You can put several firefighters in that bucket when you're fighting a fire. And you have a 2004 Sutphen engine 2, and a 2006 Sutphen engine. They're getting old. The Yukon, the deputy chief drives, that's got 115,000 miles on it. The battalion chiefs drive a 2014 Ford Explorer. That's in good shape. They have a 2007 Chevy Silverado. That's used for miscellaneous things, plowing snow. But it's an 07. It has electrical issues. So the main thing I would like to see is maybe we can concentrate on getting the deputy chief a new vehicle and get rid of that 2000 Chevy pickup truck and get a newer one. But the main thing is that 1999 truck, NFPA standards is red flagging it right now, and after 25 years, it's got to go out of service. I would love to see the records for how much money you put into that truck, and I've dealt with this before. Those trucks aren't cheap. Money should be placed in a capital fund. It should have been placed years ago. That truck alone, on the low end's $1 million. It's probably $1 million, $1.2 million. And those engines, those are, depending on what you want on them, those are about $550 to $750. They're very expensive. The good thing is they last 20 to 25 years. And I know our firefighters, they take good care of them, but they get to a point where it's just a lot of money to put into them. But we really need to concentrate on the truck one.
So Randy, weren't we putting money into, in our capital improvement budget for anticipating that we would have to buy a new truck, ladder truck?
We've never set money aside for anything. We've had it in the capital budget forecasted out in the future, but we've never set money aside.
So I know the ISO, because I got the letter about the ISO rating, and I know that one of the problems is the digitizing of the training records. Those training records are absolutely critical.
It's already taken care of.
And I'd like, at some point in time, for you to come forward with, working with Randy Ultimus, to see how many people have applied for business licenses that have not passed their business licenses because of the fire inspection.
Right.
Because that would pay itself a great deal of the salary of the inspector. Those two things alone, and I think the ISO, improving that ISO rating, makes a big difference for residents when they have to pay for their car, home insurance.
Absolutely. Capital needs improvement. The fire department was built in 1956, and I have to tell you, it's in pretty good shape. Those guys take good care of that place. And I just wanted to list some building improvements so the residents know. I mean, there was new boilers put in there in '07. All the windows have been replaced in '08. New overhead doors, interior lighting upgrades in '15. The kitchen, that's been remodeled. That looks like a industrial kitchen. '16, new roof. Generator's been replaced, and the training room's been refurbished just last year. So all in all, it's in good shape. However, there's certain things that need to be addressed. The parking lot, the rear parking lot in there, that's $75,000 to fix. I mean, someone's gonna break their ankle in there. That needs to be redone, and I believe that's earmarked to do next year. The apparatus bay floor needs repair. That's been requested. I've seen, I think, a couple budgets I've seen that in there. It's never been done. It's all cracked. The longer we wait, the worse it's gonna get, the more money it's gonna cost. The bay ceilings, they need some work. They need some scraping and painting, about $5,000. In some of those offices in there, you know, to make it a little bit more inviting for our clerk, the deputy chiefs. There's a watchroom in there, in the command office. They got paneling from the 50s in there, soiled carpet, outdated furniture. You know, just, I put 25,000, that could be high, but I'm just looking for paint and carpet to make it look more professional. And then the tiles upstairs in the shower, those gotta go, $15,000 to fix that. You know, a lot of them are cracked, moldy, you know, they just haven't been, you know, there's only so much you can do with tile. But those are the main things, but on a good note, overall, the building is in very good shape considering the year it was built. The next one is the standard operating guidelines. It's the same premise. I talked about the police, Lexipol, same thing. A lot of the fire, they call them SOGs, standard operating guidelines. They're out of date. One of the reasons they're out of date is because the deputy chief was on fire inspections all day, and they couldn't get to these. But, you know, they have scenario-based training for the fire department this Lexipol puts on. They can also, if they're on their way to a fire, they can pull up a policy to make certain that they're following the proper policies on the way there. The nice thing about Lexipol in respect to the fire department, it's a little bit cheaper. It's $74.45 a year, and that's with the discount. The cross-reference packages, again, they take all our SOGs, they give us all the model ones, and they review every one, they tell us how to update them. And the support package, 50 hours is $69.50. I don't think we need that at this point. So it's $16,345 total. If we take out the $7,000, it's well worth it to have those updated every single year. And
They don't have a package for fire and police?
yes, there's separate packages for police, fire.
No, I'm saying together. They don't have
all
a
together.
bundle
No, they're
package.
separate.
Okay.
Equipment needs, this is another good thing. I mean, the main thing is we need fire hose. I mean, right now, the deputy chief says we need 58 lengths. Typical hose is a 3-inch hose.
I thought we just bought one.
Well, and I'll get to that. It's $325 a length. It's about 18 grand. Most of the hose is 20 to 30 years old. And I'll tell you, when you're on a fire, and you're putting out a fire and that hose breaks, well, guess what? You have to shut everything down, drain the lines, disconnect the hose, put another, I mean, that could take 5 minutes. So they're in great need of fire hose. The turnout gear, they do have a second set of turnout gear, but however, it's 10 years old. NFPA says you can't use it anymore. So we need 22 sets at $2,500 a set, that's $55,000, and fitness equipment. A lot of the firefighters, they work out. I mean, I gotta tell you, the equipment they have there is embarrassing. It's outdated, I mean, it's just,
You got it from a Y.
it's old. I mean, it's just,
It was something.
and the thing is, you have to be, when you're a firefighter, like police officers, you know, we sit in the car all day, but a firefighter, when you have all that gear on, and I'm telling you, when you have that mask on, and you're crawling on your knees, going on a rescue in a house, I gotta tell you, if you're not in shape, you got problems. We're gonna be dragging you out. That's why we have 2 in, 2 out rule. They need to be in shape. They wanna be in shape, but they want the proper equipment. Again, I had a company come out, they assessed it. It's gonna be about 20,000. Do we have to replace everything at once? No, but this is a good start. Now, the good thing is, the last couple meetings ago, Mr. Sabota stated that the fire department would receive 60,000 in funding from the CDBG funding. It's 60, I don't think we'll see the money till November, someone said. So these figures you see here, knock 30 off, because we plan on buying new hose, but I just wanted to put it in the budget, just in case we didn't get the funding, you know, and this way we're guaranteed if it's approved, but if we get the 30,000, that's outstanding. Plus, we have an AFG grant that's gonna be opening up soon. Typically, life-threatening equipment, they will approve. So, I mean, we could buy all new turnout gear with that. So, we're in great shape in respect to equipment needs. In conclusion, again, the main thing is, I would like to see a fire marshal, a separate fire marshal position. I think it's imperative for the community, it's imperative for our business community, and it would certainly help our department, and, you know, they would like to, you know, it's important that they have a safe environment when they go in, when they're fighting fires. The building improvements, as I discussed, there's not many, but again, if we keep putting them off, they're just gonna escalate, it's gonna cost more money. Lexapol, I believe, is a must. Just have to figure out what plan, if the council approves what plan. And the equipment I talked about, the fire hose, the fitness equipment, and the bunker gear, turnout gear, that's imperative. But overall, I mean, these firefighters, they work very hard. They do an excellent job. And I'll tell you one thing, per capita, they are the busiest fire department in Macomb County. And I tell people, you want to be a fireman, you come to Eastpointe. That's what you do, you come here. And you have a great bunch of guys there. And, you know, again, they're depending on myself and the deputy chief to make certain improvements. We have made a lot of improvements, but there's still room for more. And again, I just want to make have them have a great environment to work in every day. I want them to have the proper equipment to do their job and serve the community. And that's it for that. It's just it's a lot easier to fire than the police, but they're not that demanding. But there's certainly some room for improvement there, and that is it. If anyone has any questions about anything, I'll be more than happy to answer.
So there's a fire marshal in Roseville, and the fire marshal in Roseville has been doing a lot of the fire marshal work in Eastpointe related to fire investigations, that which isn't done by Michigan State Police.
Yeah, if we have a fire, if we suspect arson, we do have we have trained arson investigators. Thing is, a lot of times they haven't used their skills that much. I mean, Roseville has a good program there, but the goal is to, again, we want to send more firefighters to arson investigations. Well, it's just another skill they can gain. And
No, I'm just wondering that if we did get one and he was well-trained, if we couldn't share the services, and also that almost helps to pay for the salaries of them. So St. Clair Shores also have a fire marshal, I'm sure.
just about every city, I don't know of any city that does not have a fire marshal. And I think they're bombarded with work too. And you can only do so many inspections. We had our own, we'll get them all done. You're not required to do fire inspections every year. You should be inspecting like your high rises every year, especially your restaurants every year with their suppression systems. But for the most part, you want to do as many as possible. And if you're borrowing people from other communities, they have to
Yeah.
do their own. And even if you pay them, it doesn't matter. There's only so much time in the day, they have to work with.
Well, I've
Plus,
al-
you got to remember inspections. Sometimes you have to go back 2 or 3 times before they're compliant. So
I've had a concern because we have a lot of nurseries opening, and really, I think state regulations require fire suppression equipment. And I think they're probably having people come and look at the building, but it's not meeting the requirements. And so I really think it's a critical thing in our city.
correct.
Do you have anything else?
That's it for fire. If you have any questions,
I do. Well, this kind of going back to the police. I know you said that we don't have anybody, a fire safety person to go into the schools and things like that. Do we have someone that has been into the schools for active shooter?
we do have, the firefighters, they do go into school. They put on programs at the school. Not as many as I would like to see, but they can only do so much during the course of the day. Plus, when you're short shift, there's only so much you can do. But I would like to see them put specific programs on for our seniors, our businesses, our residents, just, extend that. And the active shooter, that's another thing too. I mean, the county has, active shooter training. That's all part of it. I would like to see the police and the fire departments and Sarisa have live active shooter training, and we talked about that, and we talked about that a few times, 'cause that's important. You never know when it can happen to anybody. You see it on TV almost every other day, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I'm
You gotta be
thinking,
prepared.
are the teachers prepared for that? Where to take the kids at? When was the last time an active shooter training was done in the
The school,
schools?
they go to their own training too.
They
have
do?
their own separate training. They have
Okay.
their own protocol.
Yeah, I know.
Well, they had their own program, but I'm saying, how do, as a city, respond, to each other, the communication? Because I can do something at a training, but that training has to be together and, coincide with what you're doing. So have we done that?
And I'll tell you, we're deficient in that when it comes to active shooter training, getting everyone together, but it's new times. New times, so it's time to get on board, because we do have to be prepared for that. Just like an act of terrorism. I mean, if you ask me, are you all set for an act of terrorism? I'm gonna say, no, we're not. 'Cause anything can happen. Someone dropped a bomb in the street here, I mean, doesn't happen very often, but when it happens, everyone's just running. But for the most part, we, as law enforcement officials, as fire officials, we know how to approach situations like
I think there was some training between the school and the police
Yep.
department
that. Yep.
before you got here.
That was a while ago, but you can't train once every 2 years. It doesn't work that way. It's not even. I think it should be quarterly. But
Yeah.
again, it costs money.
I don't think it was 2 years ago.
It was a while ago. It was before my time.
Right.
I think it was longer than that, because I talked
I
to
think maybe- I
Kaiser
don't even know
about
if
it.
They did training. I think there was a suggestion of training, and they never went through.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I talked to Kaiser about it
Maybe
last year.
research it.
He said they haven't did it in years.
I believe that. That's definitely a priority.
But I know that if an alarm comes from the school, they're really rapid in their response to the school. And they've set up all different types of alarm systems at each of the school buildings.
But in the event of an active shooter, if he has to play, we are ready. There's just one way of training. You just go in and you take care of the target. That's what you do. That's what you're trained to do. Whether you're one person going into school or 5, you don't wait. You go in. That's what we're trained to do. Eliminate
yeah.
the threat.
Well, I learned how to do active shooter
Yep.
as a police officer, and then me and Mr. Sabota, we went to an actual class
Yep.
and seen how important it was, and
Yep.
it was a lot. It was a lot going on with that, and and I saw how important it was for a community like ourselves to learn that.
Matter of fact, I'm meeting with I talked to superintendent of the school. We're meeting, Mr. McLeod went to the active shooter training too, and they picked
Okay.
up some tips. They want to get with the police department and talk about certain things, for now, until we get an officer in the schools.
So
It's a
I
good
saw on
start.
Facebook that Welsh from the fire department, that he also attended a 2-day active shooter.
I heard it was good training.
It was.
A lot of information. But again, you can go to training all you want and listen. If you don't practice it, you're wasting your time.
Yeah. I had two more questions. About the exercise equipment. I'm thinking since it's just not that distance away, not that big of a difference between each other, can we just do something where they just share it? And we just make a, just have one facility where they just share and it's just brand new stuff, so we don't have to spend 30,000?
It's kind of hard, you get the fire guys, I mean, sometimes they may work out, close to bedtime, and next thing, a police officer may want to go in there at a certain hour and just, you're kind of protective of your own turf. That's their building.
Yeah.
That's their building, and it's just convenient. It's right there. You work out. You have showers. A lot of people work out. The firemen aren't going to want the policemen in their showers, and the policemen aren't going to want the firemen in their showers. So it's just more convenient if it's at separate locations.
Okay. And then with the range, with the shooting range, do you think to save some money to go to that shooting range that's on 8 Mile? Because I know that as an officer, when I went there, if I brought my gun and my own bullets to shoot, it was pretty much a little bit of nothing.
I heard it's a very nice range. I'm used to using the county range, which is a beautiful range. Actually, this is kind of a bonus having a range in your own building, because when you bring on new people, you can just go right downstairs and start shooting, start training. Whereas sometimes the county's booked for months. It's just when I worked at the college, they have a calendar on the wall, and every day is filled up. You just can't get in there. That's the only downfall. I mean, having a range, is it expensive? Absolutely. It is expensive, but is it convenient? Yes, it's very convenient. I love having a range, but it is kind of noisy when they're firing it right over the desk every day.
Well, it's right there on 8 Mile, the place. You can do some type of partnership or something.
I don't know if anyone checked that out price-wise. I would imagine. We probably
I mean, they might let you do it for free. Who knows?
It's very reasonable.
Well, we don't want it for free.
Well, we don't want to. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
That's a lot of wear and tear. I mean, it's very expensive cleaning those places up, all the lead out of there, and it's very expensive. And the more people that shoot, especially for free, I mean, I can just see.
I know you're not gonna do it for free.
But the target range we have in the basement of the PD is really fairly nice. Old, but.
It's old, but it's functional. It works, and it's convenient. That's all. Again, I'm used to going to the county.
Not Wayne counties, because that one was horrible.
Home, you can drive cars on. They have targets that are moving across. And it's nice. We don't have the room for that, but it's what we have is it's nice. It just needs some upkeep. That's all.
I think that's it for me.
Any other questions?
Oh, one more, then I'll be done with you. Now with the firework safety, do you have someone teaching that?
Firework safety? I
Yeah.
don't know if they did that last year. I don't believe so. What I'd like to do is start putting out the laws, on Facebook a couple weeks prior to certain holidays, because everyone has a different, reasoning or when fireworks can go off. I mean, it's just, but I don't think they did that last year, but that's something that we can consider. We can talk to the schools about that. We can use social media to do that. We can have a meeting in here. And again, that's part of the public safety meetings where we bring the police and fire here every quarter. We can discuss that. There's a lot of things.
So did the new proposed changes to the fireworks law go through? Because there was one that they were hoping to reduce the number of days, holidays.
I can address that, Mayor. I have an ordinance that I have been working on this week that I was hoping to get to council for next week. I don't think I'm going to, because even if I do it, Mr. Albright won't have a chance to review it. So it'll probably be for the second meeting in May. And yes, there is a new law that will change the days. In some cases it's good, in some cases it's not. Let's just say 4th of July won't be as peaceful as it legally was last year based on the new law, but the other holidays pretty much have gone by the wayside. So that'll come to council, and you'll need to adopt it in order to for us to enforce it here.
There was some talk about trying to eliminate the number of those balloons that.
Yeah.
Lanterns.
The pets were getting them swallowing balloons, and
So I didn't know whether that went through in the final ordinance or not.
I don't know about that one, but I know there's a lot of concern about that.
There is a lot of concern because they end up on roofs very
Yeah, they do.
frequently.
And
Trees.
That's swallowing rubber.
So it might, when you look at the ordinance, I mean, that's something that we can do that doesn't have to follow state law.
Yes, I'll have to look at that portion a little bit more closely.
All right, anything else? You gonna get to go home?
Actually, by charter, the Director of Public Safety is required to be at the council meeting, or maybe by council ordinance, one or the other.
Yeah, I don't mind. It's good to be here. It's just been a long day. Hope the rain stops. Anytime, if anyone has any questions, I know a lot of you work, it's hard to get over to the station, just email me. I'll get you whatever documents you need, costs. I mean, I just think I just went right for the jugular on this. I'm not gonna, beat around the bush. This is exactly what we need. I mean, we wanna move forward, this is it. And I can do it. It's just, you tell me when, it happens the next day. Simple as that. I'm not gonna say it's easy, but, it's hard to hire people. It really is, but, we'll get it done. I mean, again, once we hire these 2 police officers next week, we're at 40. I mean, that's the first time in, I think, 6 years. And that's a good beginning. But I am concerned about the 9 employees retiring here in 18 months. That's huge. When you have 5 of your lieutenants leaving, that's, and 2 sergeants, or 1 sergeant rather, that's 6. That's a lot. But then after that, it'll be good. It happens in every department.
Okay, so
Matt-
council, you want to discuss the proposed budget tomorrow?
That was a suggestion I was going to make, Madam Mayor. It's basically Mr. Blum and myself, because all of the department heads have already done their presentations, and since we already have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, and it is getting a bit late, almost at my bedtime, I would have no problems finishing this tomorrow.
Mr. Sabota, there was one question. Is library going to come out tomorrow and speak?
They can make a courtesy presentation. I'll talk to Director Sterling. Council, I believe you are, you do recall that the library board actually adopts the budget for the library, but a courtesy presentation, just like a courtesy inclusion in the budget document, was made for council. So I'll ask Director Sterling to be here tomorrow.
Thank you.
Well, we've never done it like that in the past, and aren't we? I mean, the council's still responsible for it, even if the library board approves a budget.
Actually, no. The state law is very clear with an attorney general opinion that the library board is fully responsible for the budget of the library, not the city
Even
council.
if they're appointed by city council,
Correct.
not elected.
Correct. I can provide a copy for you of that attorney general's opinion.
Sure.
I'd like to see it.
Yes.
It's interesting.
That's why the library fund wasn't included in the budget ordinance, because I've been doing this for 20 years and never has been, because the library board has full authority over the budget.
All right, so then we'll move to the hearing of the public. Does anyone out there want to say anything? Sir? Yes. And just state your name into the microphone.
My name is Robert. It's my first time to be present at something of this nature. I must have been like ESP when I talked to Mr. Rowe in regards to matters that were a very high percentage priority in regards to a safety matter. I live along the Tolford Drive, about half a mile west of Kelly. And I've been in the neighborhood I've owned my home for 32 years. I visited even before that when I used to have an aunt that was around. But my main concern is, after talking to Mr. Rowan, I even realized, because I have common sense as far as what's going on as far as police enforcement and where there can be a lack of and where there's more. And then he ever so much encouraged me to come to this, and I thought that of my patience of waiting here, I thought it would be worth my trouble, because I can't stress enough of just to be, as I said, a a very high priority safety matter because it's a Topher Drive is a 25, maybe even 30 miles an hour if the police officer wanted to get over and really be lenient. I have seen this problem going from bad, normal. Again, as I said, I've been here since '87. From normal to bad to the ultimate worst. Why I say that is because people, even though it used to be called a few years ago, because I used to be a truck driver, gone for 4 weeks, and I come home, and the last year and a half, my wife passed away from cancer, and I've been home, and with the intention of going back to work, but I've seen more than ever. And it used to be where officers, called a few years ago, they would sit, even last year for that matter, they would sit at the curb and in a plane car, which would be ever so much inconspicuous, to take matters in hand and then to get speeders going both ways, 25, 30 miles an hour. But the problem is, as much as I say, as sure as I am standing here talking about it, it's gone to like 40, 45, I kid you not, 50 miles an hour. I've even seen where people have gone in an average speed of like 25, 30, and people, I've seen it a couple of times already, where they go, like they're on a 2-lane highway. They're going right on by, and they're passing that individual, and by the time they get, they're clipping 50 miles an hour in a residential area. So I've called police a number of times, and they'll say, well, we'll take it under, put a note on it, and then they come out, and then they might just have a cruiser. I mean, it's not like I stand at the curb 25 hours a day, 8 days a week to say, hey, when there's going to be an officer there or when they're going through. But I see it once in a while coming through. They used to be where they sat at the curb in an unmarked car, and they would take matters in hand.
We have a 3-minute limit, so
Well, what I'm trying to see
I'm so glad
is
that
we
you
need,
came, so-
you know,
but we need you to wrap it up.
well,
You
what
have
I'm
30
saying is I realize there's a lack of enforcement as far as the 2 officers, but what needs to be done is more on-hand enforcement to be sitting at the curb. Again, a residential for 40, 45 miles an hour, and it's like, you know, you don't realize this until you're living in an area like this.
Right.
And I apologize for the 3-minute because I didn't know that, I'm used to seeing people stand up here like forever.
No, that's all right. We're glad that you came tonight, and we appreciate your
Well,
concern.
I mean, if I don't see to where it is, I mean, you know, I want to get over and see more to be done on this issue because it's, again, I say, it's a very high priority matter, and people walking along with their kids, baby buggies, walking. Anybody could jump that curb, cutting your grass, you know. Hey, they'll be slap the driver on the hands, put him to prison. What about the family?
Right.
You know?
So, thank you very much for coming, and now
Okay, so.
the council will be making a decision tomorrow night.
Well, after whatever, these 2 officers, I mean, if there's not gonna be more to be shown as far as what I see, then I'm gonna have to step it up myself, because I'm concerned.
We are too.
Pardon me?
We are too.
Okay. All right, if I didn't care, I wouldn't be here, but thank you
All
very
right.
much for being
Thank you
so
so much
patient.
for coming forward.
Thank you.
Come again tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, but I could, what, voice my same opinion?
Yes, your
That'd be
opinion's,
great.
your opinion's important. Jeff?
What was his name?
I don't even know.
Okay. Didn't catch his name. So it's just his first
Jeff Lubeck, Eastpointe resident. I want to say I'm sorry to see history repeating itself. About 22 years ago, they took their ladder truck to a house fire and it failed. It took a millage to replace that truck. 20 years later, we haven't put a dime away to replace the truck. And I got to tell you, that's very disappointing.
Mr. Jakubiec, did you wish to be heard? Anyone else? Dr. Early? No? All right. Second hearing of the public is closed. Move to hearing mayor and council reports. Mr. Kleinfeld.
I have nothing this evening.
Ms. Lucido.
I have nothing this evening.
Ms. Owens.
I have nothing this evening.
Mr. Dumont.
I just say thank you to all the directors for coming out, and thank you, Director Rohib and everyone else, and that's all.
All right, and I have nothing. Tomorrow should be very interesting, and we'll see you all tomorrow. So I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Support.
With support, please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Lucido,
Yes.
Owens,
Yes.
Pixley,
Yes.
DeMonico.
Yes.
I took.